The bullet tore through the warehouse window and buried itself in the wall exactly 3 inches from Ki-Soo's head. He didn't flinch. Didn't duck. Didn't even blink. He simply turned his head slowly toward the direction of the shot, his face as empty as a mannequin's, and raised 2 fingers. His men moved immediately, flooding out into the Busan night to find whoever had been stupid enough to take a shot at the living ghost. Ki-Soo adjusted his cufflinks and returned to the papers on his desk as if nothing had happened. Because to him, nothing had. The near-death experience registered in his brain the same way weather might, a fact observed but not felt. Someone had tried to kill him. His men would handle it. Life would continue its monotonous march forward. He would wake tomorrow and feel exactly what he felt now, which was precisely nothing at all. 3 years. 3 years since the assassination attempt that should have killed him but instead did something worse. The bomb had gone off in his car, the one his wife and daughter were supposed to be in. He had switched vehicles at the last moment because of a business meeting, a random decision that saved his life and ended theirs. He had stood at their funeral and felt his humanity drain away like water through cupped hands. Since that day, Ki-Soo had become a ghost wearing human skin, a man who moved through the world without touching it, who ruled Busan's underworld with clinical precision but felt no satisfaction in victory, no fear in danger, no warmth in touch. His men called him the living ghost behind his back, and the name was accurate. He controlled the ports, the gun routes, the drug shipments, every illegal enterprise that made Busan's underworld function. He made decisions that affected thousands of lives with the same emotional investment someone might have in choosing breakfast. He had become the most feared man in southern Korea not because of his cruelty, but because of his absolute emptiness. You couldn't negotiate with a ghost. You couldn't threaten someone who felt nothing. You couldn't kill what was already dead inside. The incident at the docks happened on a Tuesday night when the fog rolled in thick enough to hide secrets. Naledi Mwansa had taken a wrong turn coming back from her evening class at Busan International University, her phone's GPS leading her down an industrial road that dead-ended at a warehouse she didn't recognize. She was about to turn around when she heard the shouting, saw the flash of headlights, watched as men pulled something large and wrapped in plastic from the back of a truck. She should have run. Should have gotten in her car and driven away as fast as possible. But Naledi had spent too many years in Zambia learning that turning your back on danger didn't make it disappear, it just meant you didn't see it coming. So she stayed, crouched behind a shipping container, watching as Ki-Soo emerged from the warehouse and inspected the cargo with the detached interest of someone examining produce at a market. "The shipment is light," he said, his voice carrying in the fog. "Where are the rest of the rifles?" "There was a problem at customs, boss. We had to leave 2 crates behind." Ki-Soo didn't raise his voice. Didn't show anger. He simply pulled out a gun and shot the man in the kneecap with the casual efficiency of someone swatting a fly. The man's scream echoed across the empty dock, and Naledi's hand flew to her mouth to stifle her own gasp. But the sound was enough. Ki-Soo's head turned toward her hiding spot with the mechanical precision of a predator locating prey. "Someone is here," he said flatly. "Find them." Naledi ran. She made it maybe 50 feet before hands grabbed her from behind, professional and rough, dragging her back toward the warehouse despite her struggles. They threw her down at Ki-Soo's feet, and she looked up to find him staring down at her with eyes that held no curiosity, no anger, no emotion whatsoever. It was like being examined by something inhuman. "A student," one of his men said, holding up her university ID. "Naledi Mwansa. 25. Zambian national. Business program." "What did you see?" Ki-Soo asked, his voice as flat as still water. Naledi's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. She had learned in Zambia that showing fear to predators only made them more dangerous. "I saw a business transaction. Nothing more." "You saw a weapons deal. You saw me shoot a man. You saw enough to bring police attention to my operations." He crouched down until they were eye level, and she noticed for the first time how handsome he might have been if his face showed any life. "Give me one reason I shouldn't kill you right now." "Because if you were going to kill me, you would have done it already." Her voice was steadier than she felt. "You don't strike me as someone who wastes time on unnecessary conversations." Something flickered across his face, too fast to identify, and then it was gone. He stood, turning to his men. Take her to the office. I need to think about this. They held her in a small room in the back of the warehouse, the kind of place that had seen too much violence and absorbed it into the concrete walls. Naledi sat in a metal chair and tried to control her breathing, tried to think of escape plans, tried not to imagine all the ways this night could end badly. Hours passed. Dawn light started filtering through the high windows. And then Ki-Soo entered, alone, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You're still alive," he said, setting 1 cup in front of her. "That should tell you something. It tells me you're uncertain. Men like you don't hesitate unless something doesn't fit your usual pattern. Men like me." He almost smiled, but the expression never reached his eyes. "What kind of man am I, Naledi Mwansa? Dangerous. Powerful. Empty." She wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, grateful for the warmth. "You look at the world like you're watching it through glass. Like nothing touches you. Perceptive." He sat across from her, his movements precise and controlled. "I could kill you and feel nothing. I could let you go and feel nothing. I could torture you for information and feel nothing. Do you understand how that makes this situation complicated? Then let me go. I won't tell anyone what I saw. I just want to finish my degree and go home. Zambia." He said the word like he was testing it. "What are you running from?" The question caught her off guard. "What makes you think I'm running?" "Because no one comes to Busan to study business unless they're running from something worse. This city eats foreigners alive. So what are you escaping, Naledi?" She met his empty gaze and made a decision. "Civil violence. Tribal conflicts. I watched my family's shop burn while soldiers stood by and laughed. I watched my brother die trying to protect my mother. I came here because Korea seemed far enough away that the memories might fade. They don't." Ki-Soo's voice held no sympathy, just statement of fact. Memories don't fade. They just become background noise you learn to ignore. Is that what happened to you? You learned to ignore everything until you couldn't feel anything at all. His hand moved across the table faster than she could track, gripping her wrist with enough force to bruise. But the instant his skin touched hers, his entire body went rigid. His pupils dilated. His breath caught. And for the first time since she had met him, something that looked like shock crossed his features. "What did you do to me?" His voice was low, dangerous, confused. "I didn't do anything." Naledi tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. "You're hurting me." He released her immediately, staring at his own hand like it had betrayed him. "I felt that. When I touched you, I felt something. Warmth. Pressure. Life. I haven't felt anything physical in 3 years. No pain, no pleasure, no sensation at all. But just now, for a moment, I felt alive. Maybe you're just tired. Stressed. Your mind is playing tricks." "No." He stood abruptly, pacing like a caged animal. "No, something happened. You did something. I told you, I didn't do anything. Maybe you just finally felt something. Is that so terrible?" His laugh was bitter and broken. "You don't understand. Feeling nothing is what keeps me functional. Feeling nothing is what makes me powerful. Feeling nothing is the only way I survive each day knowing my wife and daughter are dead because of a decision I made. If I start feeling again, if I let that door open even a crack, everything I've built will collapse." Naledi stood slowly, her voice gentle. "Or maybe you'll finally start living instead of just existing." They stared at each other in the growing daylight, and Ki-Soo felt something shift inside him, something terrifying and inevitable. He had spent 3 years as a ghost, and this small Zambian woman with brave eyes and steady hands had somehow dragged him back toward humanity with a single touch. "Go," he said finally. "Leave Busan. Transfer schools. Disappear. Because if you stay, I don't know what will happen, and I don't trust myself around things I don't understand. I'm not leaving. I've run enough in my life. I'm staying to finish what I started." "Then you're a fool." But he didn't stop her when she walked out of the warehouse and into the morning sun. Ki-Soo tried to forget her. He threw himself into work, expanded operations, made decisions that required focus and precision. But every night, lying in bed staring at the ceiling, he could still feel the phantom warmth of her wrist under his fingers. The sensation haunted him, a reminder that somewhere beneath the numbness, something was still alive. He started seeing her around the city. At first he told himself it was coincidence, that Busan wasn't that large and their paths were bound to cross. But after the third time he found himself at the cafe near her university, after the fifth time he drove past her apartment building, he had to admit the truth. He was following her. Studying her. Trying to understand what she had done to him. His men noticed. Of course they noticed. The living ghost had developed a pattern, a weakness, an interest in something beyond profit and power. They whispered among themselves, speculated about what the African girl meant to their boss, worried about what it would mean if Ki-Soo started feeling things again. "You're following her," his second-in-command, Park, said one evening as they watched Naledi leave the library. "The men are talking, boss. They say you're changing. I'm observing a potential security threat. 4-6 weeks. Sir, with respect, if you wanted her dead, she'd be dead. This is something else." Ki-Soo didn't answer because Park was right, and they both knew it. This was something else entirely. Something dangerous. Something that made him feel like a man drowning who had just spotted shore but didn't remember how to swim. The second encounter happened at a restaurant where Naledi was having dinner with classmates. Ki-Soo walked in, saw her, and felt that same jolt of sensation, like electricity running through dead nerves. She noticed him immediately, her eyes widening with recognition and something that might have been fear or might have been curiosity. He approached her table, ignoring her friends. "We need to talk. I'm busy. Now." Something in his voice made her friends uncomfortable enough to find excuses to leave. When they were alone, Ki-Soo sat across from her, studying her face like it held answers to questions he didn't know how to ask. "Why are you following me?" Naledi asked quietly. "If you're going to kill me to protect your secrets, just do it. Stop playing games." "I'm not playing games. I'm trying to understand what you did to me." "I told you, I didn't do anything. I'm just a student trying to survive in a foreign country. I'm nobody special." "You're lying." He leaned forward, his voice intense despite its flatness. "You're not nobody. You stood in that warehouse and looked at me without fear. You touched me and made me feel alive for the first time in 3 years. You changed something in me, and I need to know how. I need to know why." Naledi's hands trembled slightly as she set down her water glass. "You want to know why you felt something? Because you're not actually dead inside, no matter how much you pretend to be. You're just grieving. You're just broken. And maybe, for 1 second, you let yourself be human again instead of being whatever monster you've convinced yourself you need to be." "I am a monster. Then why haven't you killed me? Why do you keep showing up wherever I am? Why do you look at me like I'm the answer to a question you're afraid to ask?" He had no response to that because she was right. He was afraid. Afraid of what it would mean to feel again, to care again, to open himself up to the kind of pain that had destroyed him 3 years ago. But he was also drawn to her with a force he couldn't control, couldn't rationalize, couldn't ignore. "I can't stay away from you," he admitted, and the words felt like pulling broken glass from a wound. "Every time I try, I end up back here. Watching you. Making sure you're safe. Feeling things I swore I'd never feel again. Then stop fighting it. Stop trying to be dead when you're clearly alive. It's exhausting watching you struggle against your own humanity. My humanity got my family killed. No. Someone else's cruelty got your family killed. You're just punishing yourself by refusing to live." Naledi stood to leave, but Ki-Soo caught her hand, that same electric sensation racing through him at the contact. She looked down at where he held her, then back at his face, and for the first time, she saw something in his eyes that looked like desperation. "Don't leave," he said quietly. "Please. Why should I stay? You scare me. Your world scares me. Everything about this situation screams that I should run as far and fast as possible. Stay because I need you to. Stay because you make me feel alive, and I don't know if I can go back to being empty now that I know what feeling is like again. Stay because I'm asking, and I never ask for anything." She sat back down slowly, her hand still in his. This is insane. You know that, right? I should be terrified of you. I should have gone to the police weeks ago. But you didn't. No. I didn't. She studied his face, seeing past the emptiness to something wounded underneath. You know what I think? I think you want to feel again. I think you're tired of being a ghost. And I think you're using me as an excuse to remember what it's like to be human. Is that so wrong? It's dangerous. For both of us. I know. His thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand, marveling at the sensation of touch. But I can't stop. Over the next weeks, they fell into a strange pattern. Ki-Soo would appear at her university, at her apartment, at the restaurants where she ate. At first his presence was unsettling, a reminder of the dangerous world she had stumbled into. But gradually, she began to see past the living ghost to the man underneath, the one who was learning how to feel again, one painful sensation at a time. He told her about his wife, about his daughter, about the bomb that had stolen his reasons for living. She told him about Zambia, about the violence she had fled, about the nightmares that still woke her screaming. They shared their damage like people comparing scars, finding strange comfort in the fact that neither of them was whole. Why me? She asked one night as they sat in his car overlooking the harbor. Out of everyone in Busan, why did I wake something in you? Because you weren't afraid when you should have been. Because you looked at me like I was human when everyone else sees a monster. Because when you touched me, something that was dead started beating again, and I can't explain it any better than that. That's not love. That's just desperation. Maybe. But it's still more than I've felt in 3 years. What happens when your enemies find out about me? What happens when they realize you have a weakness? Then I protect you. Whatever it takes. You can't protect me from your entire world. Watch me. But the universe has a way of testing declarations like that. The attack came on a Saturday evening when Naledi was walking home from the library. A van pulled up beside her, doors sliding open, hands reaching out. She fought, screaming and kicking, but there were too many of them. They threw a hood over her head and dragged her inside, and the last thing she heard was tires squealing as they drove away. The video message reached Ki-Soo an hour later. Naledi bound to a chair, her face already showing bruises, her eyes defiant even in captivity. A man's voice spoke from off-camera, mocking and confident. The living ghost has a beating heart after all. We wondered what it would take to make you feel something. Looks like we found the answer. If you want her back alive, you know the price. Ki-Soo watched the video 17 times, each viewing making something crack wider in his chest. This was what he had been afraid of. This was why he had tried to stay empty, tried to keep everyone at a distance. Because caring meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant watching people you loved suffer because of what you were. But he was done being a ghost. He was done pretending he felt nothing. Naledi had dragged him back to life, and he would burn the entire city down before he let anyone take that from him. His response was immediate and absolute. He mobilized every resource, called in every favor, activated networks that had been dormant for years. He didn't negotiate or threaten or posture. He simply started killing. Methodically. Brutally. Moving through the rival gang's operations like a natural disaster, leaving bodies and burning buildings in his wake. His men watched in shock as the living ghost transformed into something far more terrifying, a man who felt everything and channeled it all into focused violence. This wasn't clinical elimination. This was personal. This was rage and fear and desperation wearing human skin. It took 18 hours to find her. 18 hours of Naledi enduring questioning and threats while Ki-Soo tore through Busan's underworld like a force of nature. When he finally kicked down the door of the warehouse where they held her, his suit was covered in blood that wasn't his knuckles were split and raw, and his eyes held the kind of fury that came from feeling too much after years of nothing. The men guarding her died quickly. Too quickly. They didn't suffer enough for what they had done, but Ki-Soo was focused on only one thing. He cut through Naledi's restraints with shaking hands, catching her when she collapsed forward. "I've got you," he whispered against her hair. "I've got you. You're safe. You came." Her voice was rough, broken. "You actually came. Did you think I wouldn't? Did you think I'd let them keep you?" He pulled back to look at her face, his hands gentle despite the violence they had just committed. You brought me back to life, Naledi. You made me feel again. You don't get to disappear now. You don't get to leave me alone in this. I'm not going anywhere. Her hands fisted in his bloody shirt. I'm right here. He carried her out of that warehouse like she weighed nothing, his men clearing a path, his rivals learning what happened when you touched something the living ghost cared about. And as Busan's underworld watched Ki-Soo emerge with a Zambian woman cradled protectively in his arms, they understood that everything had changed. The ghost had come back to life, and a man who felt everything was far more dangerous than one who felt nothing. In the weeks that followed, Ki-Soo rebuilt his operations around a single priority, keeping Naledi safe. He strengthened security, eliminated threats, made it clear that touching her meant death. But more than that, he rebuilt himself. Slowly, painfully, he learned how to feel again without being destroyed by it. One evening, months after her rescue, they sat in his penthouse overlooking the city. Naledi's bruises had faded, but the memory of her captivity still occasionally woke her gasping. Ki-Soo had been there every time, holding her through the panic, reminding her she was safe. 3 years, he said quietly, his hand finding hers. 3 years I felt nothing. No joy, no pain, no fear, no love. I was a dead man walking, pretending to be alive. But you changed that. You touched my wrist in a warehouse and woke something I thought was gone forever. What did I wake? Naledi asked, even though she knew the answer. Everything. You woke everything. The pain, yes, but also the capacity to care. To hope. To want something beyond just existing day to day. You woke my soul, Naledi. And that terrifies me more than anything in my world ever has. Why does it terrify you? Because now I have something to lose again. Because now I can be hurt. Because loving you makes me vulnerable in ways that could destroy everything I've built. And yet you're still here. And yet I'm still here. He pulled her close, his voice rough with emotion he was still learning to express. Because being alive and vulnerable with you is better than being safe and dead without you. Because you make me want to be more than just the living ghost. You make me want to be human again. Naledi kissed him softly, tasting the truth in his words. Then be human. Be alive. Feel everything, even when it hurts. That's what it means to really live. I'm learning. It's harder than I thought it would be. Everything worth having is. They sat together as the city lights flickered on below them, two people who had been broken by life and somehow found wholeness in each other. Ki-Soo would never be the man he was before the bomb took his family, and Naledi would never forget the violence that drove her from Zambia. But together, they were learning that survival wasn't the same as living, and that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was let yourself feel again. If this story of rebirth and dangerous love has touched something in you, hit that subscribe button because we're just getting started with stories that explore what it means to be human in inhuman situations. Drop a comment and tell me, can someone who's lost everything truly come back to life, or are we all just pretending to be whole? And if you believe in second chances and the power of connection to heal even the deepest wounds, smash that like button and let us know. Until next time, remember that feeling nothing might seem safer than feeling everything, but safety isn't living, it's just a slower way to die. The real courage is in letting yourself be vulnerable enough to feel again, even when every instinct screams to stay numb. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us real.